My name is Benjamin Glover, and welcome back to Toga Talks. I'm here with Sharon Dominguez, who's running for Saratoga Springs City School District Board of Education. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself, Sharon?
Sure. I'm originally from Delaware, and I went to the University of Delaware a long time ago, and I have a degree in advertising and graphic design. My entire family is in education, so education has been a big part of topics of conversations and things like that and interest. I actually started out in early childhood education, but then switched later to advertising and graphic design. And after I graduated, I had an opportunity to gallop racehorses at Delaware Park, and that's where I met my husband, Ramon Dominguez. And so we have two beautiful boys, and we were in Long Island for 9 years, and then we moved here in 2018. We had been coming here for about 20 years, and in 2018 decided to come here full time. My husband had a traumatic brain injury in 2013, and so he could no longer ride. And anyway, so we've always loved Saratoga. It's a great community, and the schools have always been wonderful. They've got a great reputation, so we were very comfortable moving here. It was almost like a second home, if you will.
And your boys attend the school district?
I have a senior at Saratoga, and then I have a junior actually at LaSalle.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah.
So why do you want to run for school board?
Well, as I mentioned, education has always been a big part of our family. Both my sisters are teachers. One of my aunts was a teacher, and then she became the vice principal, and now she does student teaching for a university.
I see.
And she's on the school board, so it's always been a part of an interest to me, probably because of my family. And I started going to the school board meetings about a year and a half ago.
Oh, wow.
And just thought that instead of just standing up at public comment, I wanted to do something more. And so that's when I decided to jump in this year.
Wow. Yeah. Very admirable. So you've been attending the recent school board meetings. So you've seen the debate that's been surrounding the SROs at the high school. And I would be curious to know what's your opinion regarding the SRO debate, about how it's gone so far, and about how you would attempt to deal with it if elected.
Well, first of all, I'm thrilled that the board voted in favor of adding the 2 additional SROs. Prior to that, we had one at the high school and one at the junior high, and then they would, every once in a while, I guess, stop by one of the elementary schools. We have 6 elementary schools, the high school and the middle school, so that's 8 campuses. And that leaves a lot of vulnerability, in my opinion. We saw with the shooter that just happened in Tennessee, they had cased several different schools and chose that school because it had a low barrier entry. And I feel that it's important in that regard. However, I'd like to elaborate on that because I think our SROs do a lot more than just, protect from shooters or deter potential threats. I believe they become mentors. I've talked to a lot of students and even former students, and they remember their previous SROs, and instantly they have smiles on their faces, and they've had great experiences. And I also think that they become mentors, right? Mm-hmm. They're not just, not just this one job. It's a multifaceted job that they have. And I also think that it does give the students another avenue for someone to talk to. Maybe not everyone feels comfortable going to a counselor. Maybe a resource officer is someone that they can reach out to and have conversations with. So I think it's much more than again just shooter protection. I think it's a multifaceted and really great opportunity for kids to build relationships with police officers because they're in our communities.
Absolutely. And one more question before I move on from the SROs. A lot of the discussion has been centered around this idea of building a relationship between the police and these young children. Young as in 6 to 18. And I was curious to ask you, what's your opinion on that? Do you believe that that is an important element of it, or do you believe that it is a concern that we should have, that some of these students are perhaps scared or perhaps have anxiety around police officers?
Sure. I think it's a great idea to build that bridge with the resource officers in the elementary schools. I have a silly little story, but when I was young, my sister and I were playing in the circular racks at a Kmart or something like that. And my mom was frustrated. I'm sure she was exhausted after work, and she threatened us with the security officer that, she was going to sick him on us or something. And so of course what happens is we get separated and we're scared. My mom's freaking out, and the one person that we should have gone to, I remember making eye contact with him as we peeked out of the circular clothing rack, realizing our mom is not there, and looking at him and darting off the other way because we didn't want to get in trouble. Yeah. So I think it's really important what we're teaching our children. And when we have an opportunity to teach them that police officers are part of our community and that they're helpful, they're there as a resource, that we should take that opportunity. And I think that those relationships will carry over into the middle school and the high school as well. And then as they become members of our society, adults.
Absolutely. And another aspect of this is during the debate around SROs, you've seen a lot of parents come out during public comment, very concerned about this issue because it's an issue that is emotional and it affects their children, which is, of course, very important to them. And to branch off of that, how involved do you think parents or teachers should be in the school's curriculum itself?
So I think the curriculum should be approved or picked out by the professionals. And I believe that the parents should have access to that curriculum, whether it be on the website, but it should be readily available to parents so that they can either help their kids with certain lesson plans, or if it's when the kids are older, the students are older, helping them pick out classes for the following year. And so while I don't think that parents should be involved necessarily in the choosing the curriculum, I do believe they should have full access to it. And if they have questions, they should be able to get those questions answered.
So transparency rather than an oversight. Correct. What is your opinion on the recent termination of the Latin program at the high school?
Wow. I would love to see the Latin program come back. I myself did not take Latin, but after learning about the Latin program, learning how important Latin is, if we've got students that want to go into pre-med, this as an example, absolutely, like that is the foundation of their language. As we heard some of the students' testimonies about how important Latin was, even in other classes in high school, that they had an advantage of some of those subjects when because they had Latin. And so I think to myself, why would we want to eliminate something that could give our students an edge when they're, again, going into pre-med, or even if they're not pre-med, but going into, other areas where Latin can be very useful.
I mean, yeah, got high schoolers out at 7:00 on a Tuesday to talk about it, so that's pretty impressive.
It was really impressive, and then to know there were 400 people who signed a petition. We had parents come out and talk about the Latin program. So I just think again, when we moved up here, and even prior to moving here, we'd always heard about how great Saratoga schools were and how advanced they were, and the kids there were doing exceptionally well. And to think that a foundational piece of higher education is now being let go or removed it seems unfortunate.
So yeah, actually building off of that, that's a great segue. Thank you. Your campaign announcement and your campaign material has the words "preparing our students for life after graduation" as a priority, or your campaign announcement does. Could you expand on that a little bit about how this could build into that, and how that point is planning on to be worked on if you were elected?
Right. Well, I think, again, as we've got kids going into different arenas when they get out of school, they're either going to go into college, trade school, the workforce. Maybe some will start or end up going in the military. And I think that all the students have to be prepared to go into whatever's next. I actually work with a lot of small businesses, and one of the things that I hear a lot, actually I just heard this yesterday, was that they had hired a student right out of high school, and that student did not know how to use a ruler. So I know that seems very basic, probably don't use a lot of rulers, but they actually had to have like a sit down and have that adult now learn how to use a ruler, because that was what was needed for that job. So, and I'm oversimplifying it, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important to understand whatever path the students are choosing, that they're well prepared.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think I don't usually add my opinion to these, but I 100% agree with you that is maybe the primary role of an educational experience, is to prepare you for the time after your education,
right?
Your educational experience.
Well, and one of the things that when I talk to parents, and I've been talking to a lot of people going out in the community, and one of the things that I ask parents, why do you send your kids to school? And the number one answer is education. So I realize it's not just a one thing that we send our kids to school for. However, that is why parents are sending their kids to go to school. Everything else is secondary. And so when we're looking at education, it's education for what's to come next. They're being prepared for what is to come next, and that's important.
Interesting. So part of an educational experience, part of high school and middle school, involves a lot of situations, issues, experiences that require mental health help. What do you believe that the role of mental health counselors should be in a modern student's educational experience?
It's a great question.
Thanks.
After COVID, we've seen a huge uptick in mental health. I believe it's a very important issue that we need to deal with. One of the things that I think could be very helpful is integrating that with, or I should say collaborating is a better word, the student with the school, if there's a need, with the parents, and allowing the parents to come back into the picture and helping figure out what's best for that student. Parents know what's best for their children, and if the school can assist and they can create a collaborative plan to best support that student, I believe that's the best course of action.
A lot of these mental health issues can be caused by a very specific issue that we've experienced here at the high school. A recent article in the Times Union has reported a serious racism and xenophobia issue in the school district, specifically at the high school. How would you combat this issue if elected, using programs that we have not already developed?
Another great question. I think the school is attempting to bring the students together. I actually have a quote because I came across this the other day, and I thought this is my vision is that help us become greater than the differences that separate us. So again, help us become greater than the differences that separate us. And I think focusing on our strengths is a big important part of, what you focus on is what you bring about. And I think if we start focusing on what we have to offer, and I think that can be very helpful.
Absolutely. A big part of being a Board of Education member, from my view, from my analysis and research, has been that the method to which you would execute your duties is very dependent on the person that you are. Would your approach to being a Board of Education member, trustee, be more hands-on with the administration, the teachers, the curriculum, or hands-off?
I think a board in general, their job is to oversee. However, if you don't know what's happening on the ground, then I don't know how you can effectively make the best decisions for the overall school. And so I would definitely want to be more hands-on. I would want to have conversations and again, bring a collective effort between the teachers and the administration and the board and the parents and find out like where are the places that we can do better. I still think we have a great school, but I think there's always room for improvement. And I think that it has to be together. Like all the pieces have to work like a well-oiled machine together. And if it's fragmented, then it's not going to be as efficient and effective. So I think working more collaboratively.
Absolutely. You brought up earlier that you believe that education is the main purpose of a school, according to teachers. And would that be your same view? Would you have a similar view approaching the educational experience?
I do.
For a child? I
do. I think, we have to remember these kids have homes.
Yeah.
Right. And their parents are, have the responsibility to create a environment at home and a foundation. I realize not every family has that. But I believe that there's a large majority that do. And I believe that it has to be, it can't be an or, it has to be an and, right? So we have to have families doing their part, schools doing their part, and together we can really help students really achieve their full potential.
Yeah, 100%. If you were elected, and it feels a little bit silly to ask you this after you said it's an and, not nor, but what would be your number one priority, number one issue that you feel is affecting the school district in a way that you need to solve as your top priority?
Sure. Number one, I would want to ensure that we kept our SROs in place. We have 4. And if there was ever a way that we could add additional SROs, that would be amazing. I know a lot of parents would love to have an SRO designated for their particular school, elementary school, or grandparents that, would love their grandchildren to have an SRO. But at the very least, keep those 4 in place. And then I think really working on that collaborative effort between families, the school, the students, the resource officers, the mental health professionals, all of the pieces to come together. And, one of the things I think about too, there's a lot of information outside of the board.
Yeah.
There's a lot of information that we aren't privy to. right? So I think as that, as being able to sit on the board and having a better understanding of some of the things that happen in the executive sessions would create more clarity on how to
transparency.
For sure. Well, yeah, I don't know what happens in the executive sessions, right? So, and I'm not saying that there's anything underhanded happening. The whole board is there,
absolutely.
but I think sometimes as a parent, like, you'd like to know, so what, and then again, when you understand what's happening in one place, it helps the other. So again, when the school understands what's happening at home or not happening at home, they have a better idea of what they can do. And the same thing for families is when families understand what's happening at school, then they can better supplement, if you will, what they would like supplemented.
So what I'm hearing for you, and correct me if I'm wrong, is communication and collaboration.
Correct.
All right.
Great way to summarize that.
Thanks. So fair warning, couple tough questions coming up, so I'll start with the easiest one.
Okay.
What's your opinion on Joe Sabanos' announcement for his candidacy for the school board?
So I had an opportunity to meet Joe, and I think he's a father who has a 4-year-old daughter that will be starting school not this fall, but the following fall. Mm-hmm. And he wants to be part of her educational process. One of the things that did prompt him is the SROs, wanting to make sure that they're in place for his daughter. And I think I think it's great that he stepped up and threw his hat in the ring and said, I want to do this. So there's not a lot of us. There's only 5, right? Mm-hmm. Yep. So when you think about 5 out of how many residents are living in the district, I think that says a lot. Huh. Yeah.
All right. It sounds like you guys' views align on a lot of issues from my analysis of your campaign material as well as his campaign material. It seems like they're almost exactly the same as far as when you take issue to issue.
Yep. And I think we represent a lot of parents, that maybe can't always attend the school board meetings, right? Mm-hmm. Because they're working, they're running kids to soccer, or whatever it is, Yeah. And so as we've been going, I have not gone out with him, but, as we're out talking and as we've come back and spoken to one another, we feel like we're representing the large majority of parents in the district.
Yeah. So you're using the term "we" a lot. I'd like to kind of expand on that. You said you haven't walked with him, but recently there's been a string of endorsements in the last couple weeks. Which on Toga Talks, I have posted a couple of the more prominent ones. And I was curious to know if you would be at all ready to endorse his candidacy.
Well, I shared it on my Facebook page. So
yeah, that's pretty close, but I figured I didn't want to say anything, confirmed. And
yeah. I mean, it's the conversations we've had, we do have very similar views on a lot of things. So I guess that would be a yes.
All right, awesome. Okay, hard question. You ready?
Okay, here we go.
The Crackler campaign has solicited a donation from the local party committee.
Okay.
Would you ever consider doing something similar, / have you done something similar?
Could you elaborate on that?
At the last city committee meeting, the Crackler campaign representing the joint ticket of Braxton, Crackler, and Emeka, soliciting a amount of money that I have forgotten, something in the thousands, from the city committee for the purposes of mailers. And I was curious if your campaign would ever consider doing something similar, and what your opinion on your campaign doing that, not his campaign doing that.
Honestly, I don't have enough information on that, so I feel like if I were to give you an answer, it would not be necessarily the accurate answer of my opinion. Okay. So,
yeah. So I feel like we've covered a good amount of topics. I feel like we've gone over your priorities, how you attempt to accomplish that, quick summaries of what you believe and the positions are coming from the parents, from the district. And I would just like to give you an opportunity for a brief message to any potential voters, those who know they're voting, have stances, or those who don't have stances and don't know if they're going to vote. I'd be curious if you had any messages for those people.
Sure. I think right now, well, first of all, if you haven't voted in a school board election, you should definitely come out to vote. This is how our voices are heard. And if you align with my platform, then I think it would be important for you to come out and vote. I think it's important, if SROs are important to you, to know that I'm very clear that we need SROs in our school, not just for our school safety, shootings, and things like that, but I also feel like they're very instrumental in the community at the school for various reasons that I mentioned before. And also Joe is in alignment with that. And according to the last vote, the two incumbents are not. So I think that's a very clear, depending how important SROs are to you.
I would like to make aware for our listeners and that Beth Braxton has stated that her stance on the SROs is a stance similar to Cracklers and Emeka's regarding the SROs, and that is that she does not believe in the expansion of the SRO program as it had been done 2 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to make that very clear to our listeners and Sharon. Yeah. So yeah, anything else? Any other comments or concerns?
Yeah, I think that's probably
awesome. Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. Make sure to subscribe, follow us on SoundCloud. We're on Instagram and Facebook. Email us at togatalks@gmail.com if you have any comments or concerns. And yeah, vote May 16th, 2023, 6 to 9, I think.
I think it's 7 to 9.
7 to 9.
And it's at your elementary school, so it's not at your regular polling place, like you would vote in your primaries or regular elections. Mm-hmm. If you go to my website, SharonForSaratoga.com, you can actually go there and find your polling place.
Yep. Awesome. Thanks for joining us. Thank you for joining us, Sharon. Thanks for our listeners for joining us. And I'll see you guys next time.
Perfect.
Bye.